Good morning and welcome back again, Realty Pros. Today we are picking up where we left off last week with our new agent training. Our topic for today, as I had mentioned, is overcoming those fears, uncertainties, and doubts as it pertains to working with sellers. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in as we promised. If we can finish early today, then that's what we'll do. I want to go ahead and have us to do a recap for what we covered or what you remember from last week. And if it is fuzzy, don't you worry, because if it's fuzzy, then that means we'll do more of an official recap. But I want to make sure that more than anything, it sticks. All right, guys. So for those of you ladies who were here with us last week when we started this working with sellers, Joy and Kristen also, would you ladies take turns just letting me know what you remember from our last training and what information what information resonated with you most?
So we discussed, I think discussing the reasons to buy a home, what resonated the most, because I really feel like, being able to articulate those things can really like win someone over. And we talked about how, I guess I could talk about the first half of them. Does
Okay,
that work?
that's fine.
The improving your quality of life. We talked about asking the buyer why they want to purchase a home, right? And typically it's about having more space and has something to do with not throwing money away. And starting out with that point really helps to kind of get the buyer excited about the process. We talked about the tax deductibility of the mortgage interest and the property taxes. And typically that's just something that people know, oh yeah, I get money back on my taxes, but to actually know where that money, how that money is coming back, was helpful. And we learned to really be like explicit when it comes to telling the buyer that, your mortgage is made up of principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And just telling them like, although you're paying a large portion, when you pay your mortgage, a large portion up front is mortgage, interest, and property taxes, but letting them know how that returns to you specifically, I think was a huge selling point. We talked about appreciation and how that works, especially in our area. And specifically, we talked about the deferred gain and capital gain, where, okay, let me see if I can say this right. So for every primary residence that you own, every time you sell that residence or that home, if you're single, when you sell and let's say, when you're single, you can get $250,000 up to $250,000 tax-free. That's if you have that much ownership in your home, right? And then if you're married, and sell the house, you can get up to $500,000 tax-free. So I think that was a huge selling point as well.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing, Kristen. I appreciate that, Gary, and that's going to be awesome for you. That's from the buying side also, so that you don't have to wonder what you missed. All right, Joy, your turn.
Okay, so a couple of things on the seller side that was discussed on the training, basically taking a look at the CMA and understanding the components that we need to really focus in on when we have sellers, and, you know, having those conversations with sellers in regards to, you know, how much they think their property is worth. We did a lot of role playing in regards to that because, you know, understanding that when you're talking to a seller, they always think that, you know, their houses a lot of times could possibly be worth more than what it's actually worth. So having those conversations and kind of providing documentation from the CMA that kind of validates your thought process and kind of showing them, you know, how to look at the CMA and be able to get a better understanding of, you know, the price that their property should be listed at. Talked about, you know, looking at the square footage. We talked about sometimes the basement square footage is sometimes overlooked. Jasmine gave a very good example of making sure that you add up both square footages when you're talking about the entire square footage, because sometimes people only take the top level and forget the bottom level. You know, looking at the number of bedrooms versus the number of bathrooms when you're looking at the comparable properties. So we did a lot of just basically going through, you know, that CMA and understanding, you know, how to read the CMA, what we should be looking for, and what kind of communication we should be sharing with those sellers to make them, you know, a lot of times they don't understand what that process is. And so just having that CMA to provide information, you know, when they are not sure, or when they basically think, oh, my house should sell for this or my house should sell for that. And they could pretty well be right, but, you know, having that CMA and making sure that we understand that CMA to be able to explain it to them was a lot of what we kind of went over.
Excellent, Joy. Thank you so much for that recap. You ladies, I tell you, that was very specific, and thank you for that. And because I see that you have the listing piece top of mind, Joy, and that's where we are today, you are going to start us out as the listing agent. So we need to do a refresher. You've got it. You've got it down pat. You have got it down pat. And it is essential that we do a refresher on this. I want it to be top of mind for everybody, but you have a few minutes, so no worries, okay? So today, as promised, we're talking about overcoming those fears, uncertainties, and doubts when working with sellers, right? And last week, we uncovered what the seller's main objectives were. Those main objectives that the seller is going to want to know when you go to that listing appointment is how much can you sell my property for? How long is it going to take? And how easy is this process going to be? Right? So the number one person that you're selling is yourself. You're selling the seller on using you as an agent, because any agent can come and provide this market analysis, right? So that's one of the reasons that we're going to do this role playing until we begin to assign you ladies as trainers to do for all the agents coming in after you, because we want to make sure that when you go before a seller, it's second nature and you don't even have to think about it. All right. So as it pertains to the sellers, we talked about that. How much is my property going to sell for? How much is not necessarily based on the emotional equity that's tied up in the property. And that's one of the things that we uncovered last week. And within that role play, I had to chuckle because Kristen, I remember her saying that it sounds like you were describing me. And I just want you to know, Kristen, that that is not just you. I was thinking about 9 out of 10 of the sellers that I'm working with. You didn't even cross my mind, although you do on a regular basis for everything else. That was just the mentality of a seller. So if that was your mentality, know that you are just absolutely normal. And that is what the emotional piece is for the seller. And that's very important for us to understand. So as we're going through the listing information in this comparative market analysis, this is when we begin to make everything objective for the seller. Because the seller before now, it's not objective, everything is emotional. There's so much emotional equity tied into this home. This is whether it's my first home, or this is the home that I built, or this is the home that I raised my family in, or this is the home that, whatever the case is, the home is where life happens. So we have really got to regard it in such a way that we know that that is what the seller's perspective is. So this market analysis, going through this objective information, one of the main purposes of this is to separate the seller's emotional aspect from the home and show them their property in a very objective light. Okay, so that's something that we're going to have to do throughout the process with working with the seller. So just knowing that in advance will help you to be prepared for working with sellers, because you just can't get around it. They're going to be emotionally attached to their homes. I remember selling my childhood home. There was an emotional aspect there as well. But you know, Shay Porter can help you when it comes to selling homes, because the house that we're in now, he's always talking about, are you ready to sell? Are you ready to sell? I'm like, wait a minute, we've only been here for 5 years. We haven't even finished doing everything we needed to do. But that being said, he understands an objective mentality as it pertains to motivating your sellers, just like we talked about on the buyer side of seeing those features, advantages, and benefits, the same thing on the seller side. So those are some of the things that we're just going to reiterate when we go through our market analysis today, because we want to be able to speak to the seller exactly where they are. We want to know what that seller's mindset is, and we want to have those tools so that we can now overcome it. Okay. So if we look at this market analysis, this is not something that I've got to teach you guys. You're all familiar with the comparative market analysis. This is one that we've done right in Bright MLS, and this is an actual CMA. So this is done for one of our former listings. When we do them afresh, they will include can anybody tell me, let me ask you before I share with you, can anybody tell me the property types that will be included, or I should say the statuses that'll be included when doing your market analysis? And as you can see there, your status on this one includes closed. I hear you, Joy. You said closed.
Yes, I said closed.
Yep. Any other statuses? So closed is the primary and most important one. For just a moment, I see that someone has put in the chat that they can't hear. If you would try to turn your volume up, can everybody else that's on the line hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe try to reconnect your audio. Or if you've joined with the computer audio, maybe try from the cell phone audio or vice versa. But I want to make sure that you can hear and get everything that we're going through today. And let me know. All right, so we'll continue in the meantime. Thanks for putting that message in the chat. We want to make sure that you're able to get everything you need as well. So the statuses, as we were saying, when it is an active listing appointment that you're about to go on, you need to know the closed, as Joy said, because the closed, those are the properties that the appraiser is going to look to in order to assess the value of the home. And just like Joy said, those sellers are going to feel that their home is worth a whole lot more than it actually is. But those closed properties are going to be the ones to tell us, hey, these have already been appraised 9 times out of 10, and this is what the appraiser is going to look at in order to determine your home's value. All right. We're going to look at active also. When you are actually preparing for a listing presentation, you're going to look at those active properties. And why do you think it's important to look at those active properties on the market?
Shows the competition, what's out there now.
That's exactly what it is. Let's see. Okay, perfect. That's you, Mr. Porter. Thank you for helping Darlene. Want to make sure she gets what she needs. Perfect. All right, can anybody think of another status?
Coming soon.
Coming soon, that's definitely another status. And that one is going to suffice for the exact same thing that Kristen said. It lets them know what their upcoming competition is. And then as it pertains to the last status that is of significance for us. Anybody want to take a guess? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an E. You're expired. So your expired status, that is also an important status for you guys as the real estate professionals to review when you're preparing the market analysis for an active listing or a listing that you're going on an actual listing appointment for, because just like we are going to go through talking to the seller about what the actual statistics and data show for their property, you need to be able to have proof to say, okay, well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you know, the market is showing that these homes are selling between, you know, 574 and 628. I understand that you want to sell your home for 750, but let's take a look at these homes that have expired. All these homes that were listed between this price range sold in this many days. The ones that were listed in the price range that you are aiming for actually expired. They failed to sell within their allotted listing period, and thus they are no longer on the market. So those are some of the statuses that we are going to look at just to make sure that you're prepared for your listing appointment. Okay. Now, those are not going to be all included in this comparative market analysis. That is for your reference and for your learning. All right. So let's go back down to your guys' favorite page from the last time, because this is where this is going to give us a summary. We don't have to go through this market analysis page by page because we have a couple things we're going to do today with regards to role playing. But I want to kind of get your brain juices flowing there, because I want you to think in line of being you are a real estate professional, but on a listing appointment. You're going to a listing appointment, you've done your research, you have your market analysis, and these closed properties on this list, this is your pool of data. This is what you're going to be able to speak to your seller about. So you have your average close price, you have a range in terms of your close prices. You know what that looks like. You know, of course, what the square footage is or the averages of those square footage. You can look down a little bit further and you know what the average days on the market are, the high days on the market. And you can even, as we go down a little bit further, specify which property stayed on the market for so long. And we can look to see what that price point is, okay? So that's just an overview for you guys to just take a look at the information there, because we're gonna do some role playing. I'm gonna be the seller for now. And I want you guys, you're going to trade off. So you're going to role play together. One of you is going to be the agent, and you are going to convince me to list the property at the price that you believe is most appropriate for the market. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and start looking at some of those details so you have them as tools in your tool bag. Now, Joy, you said that there was something to be considered, and you said that that was the above grade as well as below grade square footage. And thank you for reiterating that, because that's something that we see all too often when we're looking at these comparative market analysis. You may see the square footage listed there, but what is the full square footage of the property? We know that that can make the difference in whether or not you're comparing apples to apples or grapes to watermelons. It really matters. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. And Joy, I won't pull you out first unless you want to. I'm going to see if we have any volunteers. Is there anybody that would like to volunteer to begin this role play? And you'll begin as the agent, and I will be your seller, and you're on a listing appointment with me. And just based on this information that you see on the screen, you're going to talk to me about what you believe the price should be for my property. And I'm going to give you some pushback. I'm going to give you a much higher value, I'm going to tell you, hey, I think that my property should be listed at this price. And you're going to use the details enclosed in this market analysis to sell me on your list price. Okay. Now remember the aspects with the seller is how much, how long, and how easy. So you're going to keep that psychology in mind when you are selling me with this information. All right. Do we have any volunteers?
I can go.
All right, come on, Kristen.
Okay, Ms. Porter, last time we met, you said you were going to come back to the table and give me an idea about how much you were looking to list your house for.
Yes, I did. Thank you so much for coming back, Kristen. You know, I've been talking to my neighbors, and I have a neighbor who's down the street, and I'm aware that they sold their property for around, $850. And I think that my home is much nicer. I think that my home has a lot more upgrades, a lot more updates than their property. So I really think that mine should sell within the $900,000 price range.
Okay, so let's take a look. Here's a copy of the comparable properties, and you're right. I think you're referring to the house on Rexford Way that closed at $850
Yes,
back in March.
yes.
Okay, so when we look at this property, they do have an additional bedroom, which adds a good deal of value. So they have a 6-bedroom, they have a 6-bedroom home, whereas yours is 5. Same number of bathrooms, and you have a pretty similar square footage. But the only issue with listing too high is sometimes the house sits for a while. When were you looking, in an ideal world, how soon would you like to close?
Well, I would like to be closed and in my new house because my husband and I, we've already built our new house and our delivery date is coming up. So it's in 30 to 45 days from now. And that's when we're going to need to move.
Okay, so 30 to 45 days. So you're really looking to maybe possibly receive an offer within a week or two after.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be
Okay.
ideal.
Yeah. Because you definitely don't want to pay 2 mortgages, right? For too long.
I don't want to pay 2 mortgages. You can say that again.
So with that being said, that house on Rexford Way, although it did close at $850, it was on the market for 160 days. So that's over 5 months. So although, yes, that's a nice closing price, we also want to look at the fact that, we also want to look at the fact that the house was sitting for over 5 months. So that's 5 months of mortgage payments. So the interesting part about listing is you want to make sure that the price is something that appeals to buyers. And so there are also some other properties here that are very similar to your home. And I heard you say that you had upgrades and updates. Could you name some of those upgrades and updates that you think set your property apart?
I have a 2-story foyer, 2-story family room with a 2-story stone fireplace. I have crown molding tray ceilings throughout. I even have wainscoting in my foyer. I have the upgraded hardwood floor with the 6-inch planks. I have probably every upgrade.
Okay, great. So let's look at a property that's still similar to yours, which are all of these listed. As you can see, like there was a property on Botsford Avenue that was listed on the low side at $530. We don't necessarily want to go there, but it's just interesting because it was only on the market for 2 days, right? Buyers were very interested in that price point. The median and price point is around $750. And the home that closed at $750 actually does have one additional bedroom and one additional bathroom, a little two things so you have 5 bedrooms, they had 6. They also had 5 full baths versus 4. Your square footage is a little higher, but that house was only on the market for 7 days. So that was an appealing price to buyers as well. I heard you speak about the upgrades. I think we could go a little higher than 750, but also we don't really want to have your house sitting, right? And all of these, if you scroll up, we can actually look at the homes that we're comparing, and you'll see that a lot of the homes on this analysis, they have what your home has as well, like the 2-story foyer and family room, crown molding throughout, on the first floor. So we've actually pulled homes that were so similar to yours. And I think after talking to you, you want to close within 30 to 45 days. So you want your days on the market to be as minimal as possible. So the closer you get to that 750, the better. I don't really know what to say after this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that information. That was very insightful, Kristen. I certainly don't want to have my home on the market for 5 months. I know that we need to go. We've already built a house, and our delivery date, like I said, is around the corner. So thank you for that information. I'll take it into consideration. I'm going to have a conversation with my husband, and we'll give you a call.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great job, Kristen. Great job. Excellent. All right, let's see. I see we have Talita who's joined us. Welcome, Talita. If you want to participate, go ahead and unmute yourself. Joy, I want to commend you because I know that you are hanging out for your birthday, but yet and still you joined us. So kudos to you, Joy. Would you like to participate as the listing agent, Joy?
Can I participate as the seller?
You can participate as the seller. Okay. I need a volunteer for the listing agent. All right, Joy, looks like you have me for the listing agent.
Okay.
All right.
And this is good because I just want to hear what your approach is when you're doing a listing, just so I can get maybe some nuggets, or we all can get some nuggets off of some of the things that you say to us.
Got it. You got it. All right, Ms. Diggs. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me today. It was a pleasure speaking with you the other day, and as promised, I come with your your comparative market analysis in hand. So I've done the research, looked at all the homes that are in your neighborhood, as well as the surroundings. So everything up to a mile or a mile and a half away, I've looked at. And what I've done is I've prepared an analysis that compares the closest homes, the most like-kind homes to your property, okay? So in your community, this beautiful community, there are a lot of properties, and I know that you may look at them, and say, oh, my home is a little bit bigger, but don't worry, we've done our due diligence to scrub them and only pull those that are as close in kind to yours as possible, okay? So
Okay.
thank you for taking me on a tour, allowing me to view your beautiful property. Now we can actually get down to the nitty gritty and we can look at what the data says. Okay. I know I've heard what your goal was for selling your property. And now let's just dive right in so that we can see what the numbers say.
Okay.
Okay. So as it pertains to the comparables in your neighborhood, we pulled about 5 of them that are your closed properties. And we have a low, median, average, and high price for these listings. So the low, we're not even going to consider. Our goal is going to be between the median, average, and high. However, I want to encourage you that for the highest price listings, those are the ones that are going to sit on the market longest. As a buyer, Ms. Diggs, you know that you're a consumer just like every other buyer. And when you're shopping around for something that is as costly as your house, you think buyers are going to choose just one to look at, or do you think they're going to shop around to see where they can get the most value for their money?
Definitely want to shop around to see where they can get the most value for their money.
Absolutely. So just like I'm sharing this comparative market analysis with you, any buyer who's looking to purchase your home, they will have already looked at a comparative market analysis with their client. So I just want to frame the conversation in that light, even before we begin to delve into the numbers, because they will have access to all of the same homes on the market to compare your property in an objective light to see how it stacks up against the competition. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that being said, we have a couple of homes that I'm just going to go through right offhand because we are not going to consider the lowest one. We want to make sure that we don't lose value. Overpricing your home, however, is going to make us lose buyers. Okay. So the average, if we price your home less than the high, so somewhere around that average price point, somewhere around that medium price point, then we're going to attract about 80% of the buyers that are in the market. Okay. There is
Okay.
actually more information in this market analysis to say that if we price it high, then we're only going to attract about 10% of the buyers that are in the market. If we price it at the market value, which is what we can see here, then we're going to attract about 60% of the buyers in the market. But if we price it slightly below that market value by about 10% below that market value, then that's going to give us a whopping 80% exposure. So all the buyers that are in the market, 80 to 90% of them will have interest in your home because of where that property is priced. Okay. So that what that means is that means competition for your home. Just like if you go to your favorite store, you may go to your Nordstrom, you may go to your Bloomingdale and you see your favorite bag. And if you see it on sale for a regular price, do you think that you're going to storm the store to go and get that bag?
Nope. I'm trying to find a cheaper price.
Okay. And what if you see that bag that you've been watching for the last 6 months and now you see it for a very reasonable deal? Are you much more likely to buy that bag?
Absolutely.
Okay, and it works the same way in real estate, Ms. Diggs, only better. Because in real estate, what's going to drive the cost of your property up is competition. So let's just think with regards to creating competition when we choose your listing price. Think as a consumer, because the buyers who are coming through the door, every last one of them are consumers just like you and I. So let's just remember our goal is going to be to price this property at a point that is going to create competition and have those buyers climbing over each other trying to get here and have them offering their highest and best offer because now they've seen so much of a value that they're like, I just cannot miss out on this home. Okay, how do you feel about that?
That sounds great.
All right. Well, let's dive right into the numbers. As promised, you see a high price point of $850,000, right? Remember what we talked about, pricing it for competition. So if we started at that $850,000 or above, how competitive do you think that your home would be with other homes in that area?
Not very competitive at all because it's the highest price.
You got it. If I price it 10% above the market, then I'm only going to get 10% of those buyers. So I am drastically going to reduce my pool of buyers there. Okay. So let's look at the median and the average. If I came down from that 850 and I came down to the median and the average, then that is where my pool is. Now I need to look within that pool and see how my property compares to those numbers. So that's my range from 719 to 750 so that I can create competition. All right. Now you let me know that which one is more attractive.
Well, definitely 750 is more attractive, but based on what you just said, should it be a number in between the 719 and the 750 just to
Now you're
drive the
talking.
competition?
Now you're talking. And I want to show you something specifically here, right? So these are not the numbers that we're going to use, but just so that you have this as a reference, what you said is spot on, Ms. Diggs. If I choose something in between, it's going to show the buyers a greater value. Let's look at the listings, the bottom two listings. 302 Botsford Avenue, which is the lowest one. So we are not going to consider that value for your list price, but I do want you to see a concept at play there. You see how it was listed. You see how it closed at a certain price. That property we're not using specifically because it tells us that there was something that is not comparable to yours, although it has a similar bedroom, bathroom ratio and size and in the same community. It tells us that that property was not like kind because it closed for less than the list price and it's nowhere near your price range. So let's just throw that one out. But as we move down to 14212 Dormansville Boulevard, look at that one and compare it to what you just said. That one was listed at 729. Mm-hmm.
And then it closed, right?
Mm-hmm. So we are absolutely within that range. We want to consider a property that's within that range. And I heard you say something. I heard you say that your property, did I hear you say that your property has more features? Tell me about some of the features and upgrades in your home.
So we've totally done a complete renovation, excuse me, on the property. Totally remodeled kitchen. We have added an addition onto the property. We have upgraded all of the bathrooms. So new flooring throughout the house, crown molding, chair molding, tray ceilings. So I would say when you come into the home, you would definitely think that this was a brand new home. Honestly, with all of the renovations, I started thinking about, should I just stay in the home instead of selling it?
Mm-hmm.
But because we are trying to downsize a little bit,
Mhm.
that is more reasons why we are looking to sell, to downsize.
Okay. Well, that is good information there. What's your timeline?
I would say at least 30 days, 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
We do have a home that we have already purchased,
Mm-hmm.
that we will be moving in within 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we will be starting to pay mortgage on that property soon. So as soon as possible with this one, so I'm not paying two mortgages at the same time.
Got it. Well, that
The
only makes
question
sense to me.
I have
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Ms. Diggs, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I had a question for you in regards to 14212.
Mm-hmm.
So I see it was listed at 729, but it closed at 705. Does
Mhm.
the CONC amount, is that a concession amount? So does that mean that the seller gave the buyer $12,000 on this deal. Am I reading that correctly?
You are reading that correctly. That's exactly what it means. And that's another aspect of the market analysis that we are going to cover a little bit further down. So that's exactly what that is. So as you can see, we have the prices, but then we have what your market entails with regards to what buyers are asking for. One
Okay.
important thing to note is that of the 5 closed sales, you only see seller concession given in 1 of them. So
Correct.
that's a very encouraging thing, because I can tell you one thing, Ms. Diggs, before COVID in the Prince George's County market, you would see that most of them had some type of seller concession attached to it. So the fact that it's only 20% of the properties, or 1 in 5, that the seller has given some type of concession is very encouraging. But you do want to make sure that you are aware that the buyer may ask for seller concession, and everything is negotiable.
Okay, I was just wondering, as we're thinking about the price, do I need to consider that component of it as well, or, for my home to sell? I noticed that it's only listed for 1 of the properties, but just wanted to think about that, make sure that I brought that up, as we're kind of going through this.
You are spot on. That is definitely a consideration. And we're going to go through each one of those things when we get to your seller net sheet, because based on the price that we choose, and I've already prepared one at the price that I recommend, so that you'll know exactly what your net is going to be based on what you owe on the property, based on your commissions, and then the probability of having some type of seller concession come out. So you'll be able to look at it on both sides, with or without seller concession, and that average in your market. So that's an excellent question.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. I want to bring your attention to something, though, as it pertains to 702 Rexford Way, because as we were talking about listing low to create competition, look at Rexford Way. This property ended up closing for $850,000. It was listed at $795. The fact that it closed for $850,000 tells me that it was worth a whole lot more than $795,000, and the buyers saw the value in that property. When you consider it in the overall market, however, that listing at $795 was a lot higher than the market average. So as you can see, that property stayed on the market for a very long time, although the value ended up being $850,000 in the end. So as you can see, with those properties that were around that $750,000 price range, they went very quickly, very, very quickly, because that's what the market is dictating over there. Why is that important? It's important because you need to be gone within 30 to 45 days. You need to be gone within 30 to 45 days. We want to list the property at a price that's going to complement your market, and it's going to drive competition and bring you lots of buyers. We want people coming through the door left and right offering you overpriced offers. And when buyers see the value and they see you have it priced at what looks to be a more than fair or a bargain in a sense, they are going to offer over and above your list price in this current hot seller's market in order to get that property secured. How do you feel about that, Ms. Diggs?
I feel good. So basically, is it better to list a little lower? We're pretty much saying it's better to list a little lower because we know in this market, buyers are going to come back higher.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying.
Okay.
Yep.
I got it. So what
Perfect,
about if I listed too high, what happens? I mean, we see that houses in the area have sold for these amounts. But what does the appraisal component have to do with it? So if I list it too high, it still has to appraise, right? In order for us to get that amount. What about if it doesn't for some reason?
So that is an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked that question. So the appraisal piece is a very large component. And that's because most of the buyers in the market are FHA buyers. And with FHA, they require that the property appraises for the contract price in order for them to fund the loan. If your buyer is conventional, however, they don't require that the property appraise for your contract price because the buyer can pay the difference. What that does, however, if we price the property well beyond the market value that we've seen that properties have appraised and sold for, then now what we've done is we've taken our property and we've put it in the realm where it's going to require only a certain type of buyer, meaning this buyer is going to have liquidity. They're going to have out-of-pocket liquid assets to pay the difference, because their lender is not going to lend them that whole amount or the percentage that they would have normally gotten. I hope that's clear. I don't want to go too far into that because I don't want it to become confusing. But the bottom line is you want to make sure that we don't have an appraisal issue for the majority of times, unless we have a cash buyer that has agreed to pay the difference. So on the backside, we verify that they have funds, but it just limits your pool of buyers. So my recommendation is price it in line with the market so you don't have an appraisal issue. And if the buyer wants to pay more, then that buyer includes that in their offer, that they're willing to pay more and they're willing to pay above the appraisal.
Okay, got it. Makes sense.
All right.
So based on that, I would think that maybe, I know the, let's see, the 305 property, I see it was listed for 740 and it closed at 750. So it actually closed $10,000 higher.
Yes, it did.
But I do understand that the subject property, which is my property, I only had 5 bedrooms and 4 baths. And this property has 6 bedrooms and 5 baths, which, is a little bit, it provides a little bit more. However, my square footage is a little bit higher, but I do know most people do pay attention to, the number of bedrooms and the number of bathrooms. And so with that being said, I'm actually thinking, we might have to go a little bit lower than what that list price of 740 is, just to make sure that we are that we draw that we set the price up for competition.
You got it. So that's what we want to do. That's our goal, to create competition. And I want to make sure that something else was clear, Ms. Diggs, from the conversation that we just had about the appraisal. I want you to be confident and comfortable in knowing that any buyer has the right to waive their appraisal contingency. If they're FHA or if they're conventional, both of them can waive that contingency, and both of them can provide proof of funds if they have it to pay the difference. So it's going to be a smaller pool of buyers that have that liquidity that can actually waive it and say, hey, bank, don't worry about giving me 96.5%. You give me that on the appraised value and I'll pay over and above that with the money that's already proven to be in my account. So if the buyer has it, they are able to make their offer stronger and do that. But you are spot on. We want to make sure that we price it in the most competitive light, so as to be able to get that type of competition on the properties.
Okay, so they can have the money in their account, whether they have a FHA or conventional.
Yes.
It's not this one. Okay, got it.
So, but it has to be explicitly stated, and I'll make sure that we take care of that for you. It would simply be an addendum to the contract, and we'll make sure that the buyer explicitly states, if they do offer over and above, hey, the buyer, in the event that the property does not appraise for the contract price, the buyer is willing to pay the difference. And when we accept a contract like that, Ms. Diggs, we have the buyer to submit their proof of funds as well. And we have a conversation with their lender so that you are not in jeopardy of the buyer not being able to fulfill those terms. So the competition is great. That's a part of what we do, our legwork on the back end, to make sure that that is secured, and well, as secured as possible for you when it comes to working with buyers that want to pay above.
Okay, thank you.
You got it.
This was awesome. You shared a lot of good information that I definitely hadn't even thought about or even considered. I just thought that, we just kind of come up with a price off the top of our head. Um, and then we just go for it. So thank you for explaining, how you look at comparable properties and what we should be looking at to determine the best listing price to draw competition.
You got it. All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Diggs. Okay,
Thank you as well.
got it. Now, that was great. The questions that you asked as a seller, Joy, those were great questions. Those were great questions. Anybody on the line, do you guys have any additional questions that maybe you didn't hear us discuss, or anything that you would, care to include or want to hear another aspect of?
No, it was helpful to hear you do it.
It was
From start to
definitely
finish.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Miss Porter, you just did that just like it was nothing.
And you'll get to that point too. When you've done quite a number of them, Joy, and you go over this information until you can regurgitate it, you'll do that and then some. So, and this was just, this was spur of the moment, but the information is what it is. So knowing that you understand the concept, no matter what the numbers come out to be, they're the concepts that you're sharing with the seller, because you're working to overcome like certain mindsets that the seller has. You want to make sure that they understand why it's important to list it, at the market value, below the highest price one. You know what I mean? And just like both you and Kristen said, you don't want to continue to pay your mortgage for all those months. You just want to dive into this information on the market analysis and pull out those tools so that you're ready to have those talking points, because you don't know which way the conversation is going to go. The seller could say anything. And you did, Joy, on that call. That was very good, because you threw out a number of things that I had not intended to cover in this segment. But that's exactly what's going to happen when you go and meet with the seller. So as long as you dive, like I said, into this information on this comparative market analysis, then you'll be prepared to go back and to share that information with the seller in the way that's still selling them on what your price point should be. All right. So as we get a little bit further down, you're going to tell them, you're going to ask them to commit to a list price. So we haven't gotten to that point just yet, but you're going to walk away with asking them to commit to a list price. So if we were to just go ahead and, insert this piece really quickly, it would be something to the effect of, Ms. Diggs, thank you for indulging me today based on the comparative market analysis that you've seen and all the information that we've covered. Will you agree to list with me for $749 today?
Okay, got it. I did have a question for you, and let me know if this is something that's going to be covered later. So I don't want to bring up something that you weren't planning to cover today. But when you get to that point, so basically you initiate the list price, the agent initiates the list price, or the buyer initiates the list price. And then if the buyer initiates the list price, and the list price is a lot higher than what you think it should be, and the buyer insists on listing at that price, but pretty much from all of the stuff that you've gone over, things that you've shown the seller, that it's way too high. But they are adamant about listing at that price. And so what happens then? Because pretty much it's going to sit, and you're probably going to have to come back and reduce the price, which then increases the days on market. Do you just go along with it because you have to, or kind of what happens at that point?
So that is an excellent question, Joy, and thank you for asking. I hear several different components in that I'm going to address. The first one is who initiates the conversation about the list price, right? And one of your initial questions is going to be to the seller, what is your goal? How much do you desire to list your property for? So you are going to ask them so that you're not flying blind. You want to know that
Okay.
before you ever get to them to do your listing appointment, on your seller intake sheet, all of those questions you want to know. How long before they need to sell, how many bedrooms, bathrooms, what is your goal? How much do you want to list your property for? How much do you still owe on your property? You should gather all of that information before you ever go to that listing appointment, so that when you actually do your market analysis, whether this is going to be excellent news to the seller, whether it's going to be exactly what they expected, or whether it's going to be, adverse information that's going to conflict with what they were hoping for. But you need to be prepared for dealing with that in advance. So thank you for asking that question. You will be initiating that question to the seller before you ever get in front of them. Okay.
Okay.
So
Got it.
as an example of what we did earlier, I just took the 900,000 that, we were doing with Kristen, and I rolled that in as if it was a part of our conversation.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
Do they ever
mhm.
refuse? Do they ever refuse to tell you what they want to list it at, and just and say, well, I want to know what you would list it at? Like, do they
So
ever withhold that?
I've seen that sometimes, but I want you to be aware that somebody's going to be sold in the conversation. Either you are going to be sold or they are going to be sold. And that's why we're going through our preliminary background information. You're doing your listing intake. And when I promise you that every question on there is purposeful. So go through it in detail. Don't skip anything. In your brokerment library, where you have your listing activation, all of the questions that you're going to ask the seller in advance, even outside of the property piece, ask those things so that you can do your research. Okay, because once you've done your research, then you're prepared, because your seller may give you pushback, and every now and again they will give you pushback, but at least you're prepared and you're confident. And nothing says to the seller that I can trust this person to do a good job with the sale of my property than a person who is confident in their data, confident in their craft, and knows exactly what it is you're talking about. Okay. So to answer another component of your question for both of you, Joy and Kristen, sometimes you will definitely get sellers who will give you pushback. And, over the years, I've learned a great deal from sellers who just refuse to list at your market analysis. Sometimes it is better to, just not list with them. Now, that is on the extreme side, right? On the more manageable side, the conversation needs to be had. Mr. or Mrs. Seller, this is what the market is showing. If we agree to list at your price, it must be with the provision that this market shows that there's, median days on market of 7, average days on market of 42. Now, this, of course, as you can see, the close date on the right-hand side, that goes back to 2020, and this is early 2021. So these are not our current days. The current days are 7 days on the market and so forth and so on. So we're just going to insert that. Okay. So your conversation with the seller would be, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, as we can see, our average days on the market are 7 days. Okay. So if we agree to list your property at $900,000, it has to be with the provision that if we do not receive an offer within 7 days, we come down to my list price, because the market has a voice. So the market's voice, whether it's silent, whether it's roaring, or whether it's kind of monotone, the market has a voice, and the buyer's interest in the property based on the value they see will determine what your property is going to sell for. Okay, so if we agree, then we're going to go ahead and add a clause to our agreement that says on such and such date, if we have not received an offer that is acceptable to you, that you will be willing to reduce it to the market value. Because the last thing we want to do, Ms. Diggs, is to have your property to become stale on the market. When the property becomes stale on the market, then you're going to start to attract the wrong type of attention. You're going to start to attract bargain hunter buyers that are just looking to, get, a bargain on your home, when our goal is to sell it for the highest and best in the least amount of time with the least amount of stress. All right, Ms. Diggs.
Got it. Yes, I do have a question. And this is just another question for you, Ms. Porter, that where I get confused sometimes with this is that, so we talked about homes that had the upgrades and, had, all of this remodeling and stuff done, which makes it a lot easier when you're looking at sometimes a CMA. However, what happens on the flip side, or how do you deal with the home that seller says, I don't want to do anything to this house. It's old, they're selling it as is. How do you come up with the CMA? I mean, how do you come up with the list price for that home? Where, you may be looking at the comps and all of the other homes that you can compare it to have, all of these upgrades. But now you're talking to a seller that's just saying, I just want to get out. I don't want to do anything. I'm not providing anything to the buyer. I just want the house to sell as is. How do you come up with a list price for that type of home?
That is an excellent question, Joy, and thank you for asking, because you will absolutely run into that situation, okay? That being said, when we looked at those comps, and I'm switching screens for you guys, so I stopped the share for just a moment because I wanted to share something new with you. But just to answer that question in short, our market analysis shows a range. It shows the low, average, median, and high. Those properties that are the cream of the crop are the ones that are selling at the high. The ones that are not are the ones that are selling at the low. So when you complete your comparative market analysis, you have to do so with advising your seller that in this condition, this is what your property is going to likely sell for. So you saw how when we were having that conversation, I said, hey, we're going to automatically rule out this one that's around 530,000 because your property, yes. But if that property is the one that is at the, kind of the lower end of the spectrum with regards to, upkeep, updates, then those are the properties that you're actually going to compare it to. Those that are at the lower end of the market analysis, because that's what the home sells for. If all things are equal and they're all 5-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom, 42, somewhere around 42 to 4,500 square feet, how do you determine where to list it? And that's where that comes in. What is the condition for the property? What are the features? What are the amenities? What are the upgrades and updates? And how well kept is the property? And all those things. Now that's how we're going to dive into that.
Okay. So you have to kind of go back to that low price point and kind of factor that one back in. Okay.
You got it. Now I want to share something with you guys because we were on a screen that was a part of our conversation, but I mentioned a couple things and I wanted you guys to know where to pull that information from. All right, so let's see. Okay, so as stated in Bright MLS, when you complete the full comparative market analysis in Bright MLS, I recommend it for your listings. We all know that you have various apps or various platforms to do comparative market analysis, and they all serve a purpose. When you're working with buyers, HomeSnap is extremely effective. You can do it in 2 to 3 minutes and you're done. I recommend using HomeSnap when you're working with your buyers, okay? When you're doing a comparative market analysis for your listing appointment, I absolutely recommend and want you guys to every single time do your comparative market analysis in Bright MLS. It's going to take you about 5 additional minutes and it's time well spent because you need to be able to dissect all this information. Whereas with HomeSnap, you're going to see all the beautiful photos in there. That is helpful. Bright, you're going to see statistics, you're going to see data, you're going to see a higher level of data. One of the things that I talked about is this chart right here. Okay, so can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. The importance of pricing. This is where I got this information from. All right. So the importance of pricing, you use this as a powerful tool, because if they're pricing their property above market value, you can see the percentage of buyers that they're reaching. Okay. If they're pricing their property at market value, you can see the percentage of buyers that they're reaching. So forth and so on. 10% below market value, you see that they're reaching around 75%. 15% market value, you see that they're, below market value at asking price, you see that they're reaching 80% of the market. These two right here, this is where all of your competition comes in. Okay, bare minimum market value, not above market value. If you see 10% above market value, cuts their exposure in half. You guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so very, very powerful tool, and this is available to you right there. Another page also that is an extremely powerful tool is the effects of overpricing. Okay, so this is the average percentage difference between the selling and the average price by length of time the home was on the market. So as it pertains to the question that you asked, when the seller says, okay, well, I want to list it high, I see your numbers, Joy, I see your numbers, Kristen, but I want to list my home at 900. I see that the highest one only sold for 850, but I want to list it for 900. This is another tool for you, because this helps you to show them that when the property was on the home for, less than 4 weeks, then that if the property sold for 1.9% less than what that list price was. At 4 weeks or more, or 4 to 12 weeks, it came down to 3.6% less. 13 weeks to 24 weeks came down to 5.6% less. More than 24 weeks on the market, that property was at 8.9, almost 10% less than what the seller expected. So having the property on the market over time, it market ages the property. It makes the property become stale. It makes it become less attractive. And then the end selling price is, as you can see at the larger end of the scale on the right, almost 10% less than what the seller was expecting or hoping for. So this is something that you can use as a tool for your tool bag, just like the two of you stated so well. You don't want to pay multiple months of mortgage. Well, you also don't want to lose almost 10% in profits because you wanted to get, 3% more. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So that's another tool for your tool belt. All of this information is located right in your market analysis there. And there was another page. So this, guys, this information is located in your listing presentation, most of it also, but some of it, because this is for your seller. So what you're going to email them or print out for them and put in your Porterhouse folder is this market analysis. Just like when we're working with the buyers, we print out their happy home hunting guide. When we're working with the sellers, you print out their full market analysis, and this is the information that they take home. So as you're going through your listing consultation with them, you're hitting on all these points in your Porterhouse listing consultation because it's there for you, but this is their take home. So when they go home and say, what did Kristen say? I know she said something about the market analysis. Here is one of your pages. So they can go back and take a look at this. There's always a seller's desired price range, as you can see. Then there's a buyer's desired price range. But that piece that meets in the middle, that's your market analysis. That is your market value. That is the price range that buyers and sellers will likely agree to. Okay.
Okay.
Another page that talks about the pitfalls of overpricing. Overpricing your house, it has a very negative impact. All right. So many other features in here that we're not going to go through today, but I just wanted to point out some of those most prominent pieces so that you guys can know where to go for that particular resource that I was just flowing through today. And that being said, go back, take a look at everything. We'll do some more role playing so that you can deliver that information, but now you know where those resources are located. Any questions?
Nope, that's great, because I was actually, I actually put down on my paper, percentages question mark to ask you where you were pulling those percentages from. So
Got
this
it.
is good.
So this page has the specific percentages for you. So just right offhand, you know, just look at them, because I was looking at a couple different things in my mind's eye, but let's make sure we have the specifics when we're in front of the seller. All right. Another thing to share with the seller as it pertains to, and this is just to finalize this segment of our training for today, when we're talking about selling the property for the highest price possible, you want to remind the seller that you work on commission. So it's in your best interest as well as theirs to sell their property for the highest price possible in the least amount of time with the least amount of issues there, because you're paid on a commission base. So it's mutually beneficial. So you absolutely want their property to sell for as much as possible, but you want to make sure it's done in a way that doesn't have a negative effect on the property. So as you see the activity over time right there, the weeks on the market, that first 2 weeks, those are the 2 weeks on the market where that property is going to have the most activity. After that, there's a drastic drop off. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're Realty pros. We're Porterhouse Realty pros. So you're going to share this information with your seller, and you're going to sell your seller on doing what's best for them and what's best for their property. Okay. It's imperative that you're always selling it. This is what's best for them. They may not think so, but neither did the person who had, what was that, 162 days or something like that, that it took that person? That person probably thought that that was a better thing to do. But as we can see, it wasn't necessarily the best thing to do to wait that long, especially depending on the seller's circumstances. So provide them with this information and a features, advantages, and a benefits kind of package so that they can see how it benefits them. All right. Any other
Thank you.
questions about that portion of the segment before we move on?
No.
All right, then I am going to stop the recording right there for now, and we will jump right into the next part of this segment.